I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thanks for attending our session today on integrated pork production, problems and solutions from technical experts. So the relevance of this session is kind of addressed two areas. It's really to educate primarily students about opportunities in integrated systems and some of the problem solving that's done in those systems, but also for those curious with this unique production structure. It's undoubtedly a fact that the North American pork industry has been consolidating over the past few decades and making it very common to have integrated companies. Veterinarians and nutritionists are commonly employed by those companies and encounter a lot of common problems that all veterinarians and nutritionists, no matter what the business structure, encounter, but often have unique solutions because of the integrated structure or connected food system they represent. So I just want to give you a little bit of outline on the structure today. I'm going to kind of kick it off here, and then we're going to have 3 speakers and then a panel discussion at the end. I've invited Dr. Wayne Cass and Dr. Ethan Spronk to join us, and we're just going to have some open discussion at the end. So depending on the amount of time we have after the end of each presentation, if there's time for questions, we'll take them. Otherwise, I encourage you to hold them at the end so we can share during the panel discussion. So a little bit of background about the rise of a vertically integrated pork company in North America. Really, the framework started in the 1950s in the poultry industry, the idea of applying an integrated, a vertically integrated production system into protein production. And by the late 1960s and 70s, broiler chickens were being sold, not only were being owned, fed, processed, and sold by one singular entity and even had brand recognition. Now 95% of the chicken on the market is actually under a brand name. So obviously chicken's been extremely successful protein, consumed worldwide, #1 protein consumed worldwide. And it's no doubt that pork producers noticed that success. And so in the 1980s, you started seeing feed mills and pig brokers structuring their companies in an integrated manner, so they'd own different segments of the business. But at that time, it was relatively few engaged in that type of business structure. Really accelerated in the 90s, and that's with the rise of contract production. That really comes from the fact that production now is extremely capital intensive, and so you have to have money to invest in a lot of the new technology and modernized facilities that really make us very profitable today. And so banks were willing to lend to producers, and it was a really great production model for both the integrator and the grower. And you saw this production system really take hold first in the Southeast, particularly North Carolina, not as popular in the Midwest. And it really had to do with some bad experiences that banks in the Midwest had with poultry producers, or in those early days of the integrated structure in chickens, where a lot of farmers had borrowed money and weren't able to actually pay off those notes. So through the 90s, 2000s, pig and pork production really became a standalone business, and really the leading companies in that were Smithfield Foods and Seaboard Foods. Obviously, Smithfield Foods has continued, really grown through consolidation. Carroll's Foods, Browns of Carolina, both located in North Carolina, they were able to, they had a packing plant, and then they were able to, they wanted to be able to source particular pigs into that plant and to meet certain specs. And Seaboard followed suit uniquely in Oklahoma. today, these integrated companies really apply a systems approach to production. And this is where we're going to get into let our subject matter experts really shine today and talk about how that system approach influences how they solve problems. And so really, you see with that systems approach became that shift from being just somebody who produced pigs and then they became not your problem when you sold them, to today we have ownership all the way through the industry, as from truly that farm to fork structure. So a few comments about as I was reading a little bit about vertical integrated production, because it wasn't looked on very favorably initially by a lot of other producers, because people were used to being an independent producer, that autonomy. And so there was some concerns that it would actually not be a sustainable business structure for a pork producer. But I would tell you today that has been shown to be wrong. And a few things that I want to point out that really made vertically integrated production sustainable, and why you see it continuing to expand in North America, is because the vertically integrated producer is able to provide a safe and affordable, consistent protein source to those consumers, and we're providing it worldwide. The company I work for, Seaboard Foods, is one of the largest suppliers of pork to Japan. It was a way for pig farmers to stay in business. Initially, people thought it was going to put the farmer out of business and displace farmers. You see Smithfield has a unique tagline, our families feeding your families. And that's with that contract production relationship allowed farmers to stay in business, continuing to be able to have a nice diversified farm. So it turned out to be sustainable for that pig farmer. Local communities, vertically integrated producers have really taken a lot of time to invest in the communities, everything from scholarships to local high school kids. A lot of times to get them involved, even in rural areas, you've got a lot of high school kids that don't really know very much about production. So we're trying to make ourselves sustainable, be able to keep a workforce coming through and operating our farms by investing in our communities, teaching them about what we do, and trying to be transparent. One thing that was predicted, or was a concern, I guess, not predicted, but was raised as a key concern, was that these contract agreements would negatively affect the cash market prices received. There's going to be some references you can go read about studies that show that turned out not to be the case. Although very few pigs are being sold on the spot cash market anymore. And then, so in summary, the sustainability issues that were predicted in those early years just never materialized. And so I spoke a little bit about that farm to fork structure, and really what is farm to fork? It's really traceability. People want to know where their food comes from. They want a food story today. They want to choose, that ability to choose, and you heard Dr. Frecking and Dr. Murray talk about New Fashion and and Triumph Foods offering this choice. People, they're very emotional about their food choices, and so they're interested in and want to know more about how the use of things like ractopamine affects them. Antibiotics have affected them. They're very interested in how we raise the animals. So we've, with this vertical integration, has been able to provide a lot of different choices to those consumers for whatever reason would not seek out what we would consider the typical modern commercial produced pork. And I would say that vertical integrated model led to the branding that you see today. You've got Smithfield as its own product. Seaboard has Prairie Fresh, and JBS with Swift, and you'll see a lot of, and I think that'll continue, that brand recognition, and again, because people want the choice and they want to identify with that pork, with their food. So I think one thing that's new now, as some of the relationships have changed, and you're seeing some unique relationships, not just integrated production, but now connected food systems. So specifically, I think you're all aware what integration means. It's connecting more than two or more aspects of ownership together. But I think early on it really was focused on that pig portion, and now you're seeing it expand, where you see networks of producers. They have feed mills, they have genetics companies, and then they also own that packing plant, but not always under one ownership. And so I propose that we're really marketing a connected food system now, not just an integrated pork production system. So this is I guess an infographic. If Kay was here, Joe, she could correct me. I'm not really sure how the marketing team, what their term for this is, but this is just an example of how we describe our integrated food system at Seaboard. You can see, so we've got our typical animal production component, our plant operations. We've got our support operations, so we do own our feed mills. Most of our transportation is owned and operated within Seaboard Foods. HR team, those technical experts that you'll hear from a couple of us today. And one other thing that we've added is what I would say maybe it's a value added or a diversified. I really couldn't find the right term for it. But we have what's called High Plains Bioenergy, where we're actually taking the fat that we're getting out of our plant and turning that into fuel. So truly this connected story to try to really get full sustainability out of our production system. So I told you, North America pork producers continue to become more integrated. This is the global mega producers. The folks, the co-ops, there's 2 co-ops, 4 integrated systems that are on this list, and they account for about 80% of the sows in the U.S. And I use the orange arrows for more of your cooperative type producers, and then I predict that Prestige is going to come online with their, I'm making a little prediction there that they're going to come online with their plant, so I included them here. But the blue arrows show you who's currently an actual integrated producer today. So expansion of the connected pork system, we've added some new processing plants. You're going to see a lot more packing capacity. Today, about 60% of the U.S. Packing capacity is owned by vertically integrated companies. These are just 3 of the new plants that are going to be brought online. Clemens, so Clarity Packing, the Clarity Group, which you would associate with Country View, Family Farms, the STF plant, which is a joint venture between Seaboard and Triumph, and then, like I said, the Prestige facility. And these numbers represent what that total head per day packing capacity will be. And then, as I made these slides, we had a new announcement from the Pipestone Group that they'll be engaging in trying to extract that full value pig themselves, and have announced that they'll be operating Holstein farms. I tried to convince Joel to tell me how many head that they were going to predict to harvest daily. He couldn't give me that number. So, oh well, I tried. Just quickly, it's not just, I talked about North America. Canada has made similar moves. They're highly integrated. I've listed out the producers here. 75% of their production's in 3 provinces. That's their integrators, and like us, they consolidated over a period of basically 30 years into larger and those modern farms. And so, I put the map up here because honestly, I couldn't remember where Quebec, Ontario, and Manitoba were. So you have some idea where the pigs are in Canada. So just wanted to briefly talk about the folks that I invited today to speak in this session. All people who I respect and are good friends of mine who I've worked with over the years. Few things about them that I thought were interesting and maybe show you the opportunity. Like I said, this session, we were asked to give it to help educate particularly students about the opportunities in integrated production. So all the session speakers are employed by one of the top 20 global mega producers. They work for vertically integrated companies, and they're all under 50, and they are subject matter experts and well respected throughout the industry. So we're going to jump into those talks now.